Billy, first of all, welcome to Skina's podcast. I'm so excited for you. How excited are you, or how nervous are you about Tuesday, January 21st?
Well, I always feel better when I'm talking to you, so you always make me feel way better than I probably should. But needless to say, being the final writer's ballot, it's nerve wracking, a lot of anxiety, but working through all that.
And when you think of everything you've done, I read that great story Tyler Kepner wrote in The Athletic, and I've talked to you, text you a couple of times over the last month. When you think of just your life and what you've gone through and how much effort you've put into baseball, how difficult is it to be waiting to see, what other people think of you in essence as far as being
Well,
a Hall of Famer?
well, I think when you're down to that last moment to see what your value is, uh, that's difficult because like I was saying earlier in some interviews that I've been doing is that this decision this doesn't only affect me. This is Southwest Virginia. This is Ferrum College. This is the small Division 3 schools. Because I don't know how many Division 3 baseball players have been put into the National Hall of Fame. Um, but I know that there's only three in the College Hall of Fame. So I can only imagine the number. And so, it doesn't just affect me personally. It has a lot to do with the younger kids that are hoping to get to the Hall of Fame or get to Major League Baseball. And there's a lot that is attached to this that in the long term may not have this big dramatic effect, but it does have effect on dreams for people and for myself. I mean, to come from Southwest Virginia in a rural area to have to be undersized, to get to a Division 3 school, to move up the line. I think it's one of those things nobody's expecting it, and you start to see that having that dream and stuff is possible. And so to have that cherry on top is you know um, you know is a blessing, uh, just to be that this close. But you can see what it does to you know so many people around you. I know, just talking to Southwest Virginia friends and family and community, Ferrum, their support. I think that it just shows what it does mean for them in a whole, because I am, you know, pretty much the epitome of Southwest Virginia.
I've been to your beautiful home. I met your kids for the first time in 2001, and I've seen you grow as a ball player, but more importantly as a dad and as a husband. And I've seen, uh, when you think of your career, and I talked to Tom Glavine last year in 2023 when we served on the Harris committee that elected Jim Leland. I talked to Chipper Jones and obviously Bagwell and that committee, but also Bagwell away from that committee. And Hall of Famers tell me Billy Wagner's a Hall of Famer. Uh, but what people don't realize, and I think what has hurt you in the voting, is you didn't stick around to accumulate. And Tom Glavine said, like, man, if he'd have stuck around, he could have gotten all those numbers. But your family was more important to you. For people who don't know that story, can you share why you retired when you did after an all-star season? And also tell people who don't know the story about your upbringing and how important it was for you that your boys and your daughter had a father active in their life.
Well, I mean, I came from a broken home early, and my family's my dad's side of the family is a very athletic family, and it was about sports and growing blue collar. My mom's side of the family was very blue collar. They came from Kentucky, or actually West Virginia, Pike, West Virginia. And so, I mean, you had two different sides of the track. And then, uh, going through a split family, um, and the ups and downs, being raised by both sets of grandparents, eventually going to my aunt and uncle through my high school years into college. When it got to a point where I got to pro ball and I had my own kids, and it became a point where, my selfishness had to I had to get a hold of my selfishness, and because I was seeing what my wife was going through, there was a lot going on for her to do for four kids, um, and me wanting to be with them more and more to experience missing those things. I think it was a combination of my dad and I still have a good relationship, but it wasn't that home situation, wasn't a consistent. And so when I had the chance to make a decision, it was easy to make a decision for my family because they are the most important. At the end of the day, Hall of Fame, no Hall of Fame, I'm still going to be dad, but their their lives matter more to me than mine.
You've had mentors along the way. You learned from relievers how to be accountable. But when I talk to people about you, and I'm not talking about stats, because I've outlined them, I've written about them, I've made the statistical case for why you're a Hall of Famer, and I'm proud to have voted you for you every year for the last 10 years and be part of that original 46 who voted in your first time on the ballot. But as far as being accountable, accessible, especially in this day and age where ball players, God bless them, they have these beautiful clubhouses, beautiful dining rooms in those clubhouses, and they tend to hide. You never hid, whether you
Well,
blew a
maybe I
save.
should have, because I mean, I think when you do as many, when you're accessible and you do as many interviews as I did, you obviously rub somebody wrong. I mean, because writers have friends and things like that on the team, and they that rubs people wrong. You know, the one thing that I always was taught by Xavier Hernandez, Doug Brocail, Doug Henry, is that good, bad, or indifferent, you're there. You take the blame and you pass the wins. And I think that's a big thing. I think you me doing my job is what I'm supposed to do, but you know, um, understanding that when you have that bad day, standing out there in front, and just acknowledging, hey man, I didn't have a good day. I needed to do better. I didn't make the pitch or whatever. I just think that was something that those guys instilled, but I think it was something that for me came easy because I wanted to please, I wanted to win, I wanted to do all these things. My personal goals were not in they weren't part of that decision. Now, winning was the goal. That's how I was brought up in high school and college. And whether I pitched well and we won, or I pitched well and we lost, you're either a winner or you're a loser. And so being accountable in either instance was just the way I was brought up, and there was no gray matter to it. It didn't matter if you had people that were sick in your family. It didn't matter. You chose to do this job. I mean, the day that Livy was born in Houston, my wife goes, "Go on down and be with the team." So I go down. Jimmy Williams goes, "Hey, you're down today," and I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm in. I'm good. I blew a save that day." Luis Gonzalez hits a home run off the top of Minute Maid, that wall, and you know, there's, but you have to be accountable. You can't go, "Well, my daughter, was born, so I was tired." Whatever. You can't make those. That if you choose to play this game, you have to be accountable. Good, bad, and the other. When I give up a home run to Sotoguchi, that's part of the game. That's the good parts and the bad parts. You know, those are you can't just pick times to be accountable when things are going well. It really just, I think it shows your character when you're there every time. I don't have to be there as much when I'm winning because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but I am going to give credit to the people who allowed me to get to that save, like a Jay Powell or a Mike Magnanti or a, Scott Ellerton, Ricky Stone, guys that really did that. Those are the guys that you credit. That's the guys, the guys that went out there and got you that extra run, or Jay Powell for giving up that extra run so I could get a save. So, those that's why you're accountable.
Well, you mentioned the birth where you blew the save, but if I remember correctly, I read a clip when I visited your house. Which child was born the day that you got the save, or because I wrote about you getting the save maybe the first day the boy was born. Who was born in 2001 or 2002?
Jeremy was in. He was 2000. No, yes, 2000. Jeremy was 2000. Jeremy was 2000, but he was in. But he's a November baby, so it'd have to be. It's either Livia or Will, because with Will I got, I had a concussion, so the Livia, blew the save on her day, and Gonzo signs a bat. Took your dad deep on your day of your birth. So I mean, for all that crap, that was, there's just points in your life that those things don't really matter. And, that moment when I gave up the home run, it sucked, but there were so many other things that were more important. And, it was still fun to be in that battle.
You played in some of the greatest baseball cities, right? Like Atlanta, Houston, New York, Philadelphia. And I tell you, I covered the Mets before I came to Houston, and I still, like Shea Stadium to me will forever have special memories, and that fan base is great. The Astros, this is where I've chosen to make my home. Coming back from St. Louis after leaving for a couple of years. But what are some of your favorite memories? Let's go down memory lane. Let's talk some positive, great memories. What are your favorite 3 memories in Houston?
Well, I think, your debut by far and away in Shea Stadium, and you come in, I don't even remember running in. I floated in, I'm facing Rico Bronya. I come set, and who am I looking at? Jeff Bagwell, Jeff Kent's the runner, and Craig Biggio's the second baseman. That's that epitome of like, holy shit, I made it. I'm here. I think without a doubt, the second one is, the no-hitter. I think the no-hitter stands out because of being in New York, and the writers telling me that, there's ghosts here. And for whatever reason, the guy goes, they've never been no hit, in Yankee Stadium in 50 some years. And I'm like, huh. And then it happens that night. So that definitely stands out. And then, I guess, becoming the all-time saves leader for the Astros. That was a moment, because I know that Dave Smith had meant so much to the organization. Just listening to the older players like Dirk and Vern Rule and these guys talk about him, and Joe Sambito and these guys talk about him, and to be able to join that class and move ahead. That was a special moment.
Well, it's I still remember I'll never forget June 11, 2003, the 7-pitcher no-hitter, and just the craziness.
Sorry, I forgot. Somebody's going to come banging on my door here in a minute, and I didn't want to sit there and be throwing all hands up and everything. So,
I hear you. Yeah, I still remember that 7-pitcher no-hitter, the low of Roy Oswalt having to leave with another groin injury, and just like Pete Monroe just dancing through all the trouble. I think he's the one who had the bases loaded, and then Kirk Sarloos, and then then when it got to the big dogs, you got Octavio Dotel striking out 4 people, and getting 4 outs, and then Brad Lidge. I think Brad Lidge first, and then Dotel, and then you get
Yeah.
up there, and it was crazy to be there because, and to that point, I'd only covered 1 no hitter, and it was David Cohn's perfect game when I was a backup Yankees Mets writer in 1999, and I really do believe that old Yankee Stadium, there was something magical about that place, and truly one like Yogi Berra Day, David Cohn's perfect game, like it could not be more magical. Don Larson, and then you guys show up and you guys make magic, and then 20 some years later, the Astros made magic again. And what did you take anything from that game? What did you keep from that game? What memento did you keep from that no hitter?
I've got the ball.
Okay.
I've got the ball. I mean, everybody thought that I gave it to Drayton. I didn't give that to Drayton. I mean, Dennis Laborio literally said, "Keep that ball. Don't give that damn ball to him. You keep that ball. You earned it." So, and Dennis was like probably, I mean, of all the people, he was my biggest fan. I think Dennis loved me more than anything. Yeah, I got to keep that ball. I've got that baseball.
Wow, that's awesome. And how about Shea Stadium and your memory? I know you went to Philadelphia first, but you spent more time with the Mets, and you chose to sign with the Mets, right? Like
Right.
Philadelphia, yes. You had no choice. What are some of your favorite memories with the Mets? And I named my second daughter Maya Shea. That should met my wife at Shea Stadium. That should tell you what the Mets mean to my family and to me. But what are some of your favorite memories of the Mets?
Well, I tell you, we were talking about this the other night, and something that stuck out to me is how good the Wilpons were to me and my family, knowing that where I was coming from and what I was trying to do, because I spoke to them and I said, to get to the Hall of Fame, I have to go through New York. I know that I'm not your, normal pitcher coming from rural Virginia to New York, but I know if I'm going to get to the Hall of Fame or have a chance to go to the Hall of Fame, I got to do well in New York. So I think that moment, I think the moment of being able to, pitch behind some of the greatest pitchers ever, and Pedro Martinez and Tom Glavine, the 06 playoffs. I mean, when you watch Carlos Beltran and Delgado and LaDuca and Valentin and Reyes and Wright and Indy make the great play in the playoffs. I mean, the epics games, those are the things that stood out to me, and from the other side, it was just learning how to mature as a player through the media, because that's a learning curve. Going through Philadelphia, New York, learning how to deal with more media. That was something I learned. So when I got to Boston, and when I got traded to Boston, and then when I went to Atlanta, it was completely different, way easier to deal with and low key. But it was just New York is one of my favorite places. I would have never said it would have been my favorite place when I first started, but I enjoy going up there. Jay Horwitz is one of my favorite people in the world. I look forward to seeing him every time I'm around. And when I think of New York, I think of Doc and Strawberry and Piazza. And so when I do get to see those guys, I become a fan, even though I played against these guys and with Doc.
Well, it's crazy that you mentioned Jay Horwitz is one of my favorite guys covering the Mets beat. I love Jay Horwitz. And I don't know if you remember this, but I do remember you knew you were going to be traded. And I don't know if you remember telling me this. You said, Jesus, the only 2 places I don't want to go is Philadelphia and New York. And I laughed my butt off when you ended up in Philadelphia and then you end up loving New York. But isn't that crazy? Because you would have thought just that, a guy from West Virginia, but those are great places to play, like New York. And when did you think, did you Did you mention it to the Wilpons that, hey, if I want to get to the Hall of Fame, I need to go through New York? Or is that
Definitely, that was part of the discussion when, you know, it's crazy that New York ended up being the guy that, to come and talk to me about coming to New York. But I wasn't afraid of the game in the game. The game never worried me. What worried me was handling the outside, because I knew I wasn't very politically correct. And when I say that, it wasn't meant in I just, I spoke how I felt. And, those are just, no-nos. Those are killers. And so what I think, and this is where I've been able to help Will. He's supposed to do an interview with somebody and about me in the Hall of Fame. And the first thing I told him was, deny. You do not just tell them you do not do anything about your dad, because what I've learned is that you just don't know who is where this goes. If you say anything negative, you just don't know how that it's viewed. The intent, everything. And so but I truly loved going to New York. I truly enjoyed that, and looking back, Philadelphia hardened me for that experience. But, my best years were in Philadelphia and New York. I mean, it hardened me to be able to pitch in those situations and to deal with a lot, and being able to go through that, has been some of the, the moments that's allowed me to get through other tough moments.
Knowing how difficult it is for you to be politically correct, how difficult has it been for you to kind of bite your tongue over these last 2 years, especially last year, 5 votes shy? Because I know it was hurting, and you've mentioned to people that you were hurting. And sometimes when you hurt, you lash out. We all do. But how difficult was it to kind of like just not say anything?
Well, being
not insult us writers.
Being in front of 30 kids too kind of helps you understand that there's more to this, and you got to show how to handle disappointment. So that was it was tough. It sucked. I mean, I went home and it was tough. But if this works out, it's going to make it more enjoyable. But there ain't one part of this that's been fun. I mean, I tell everybody, it's not even about stats. There's never been a debate on my stats. There's not one person going, well, his stats are a little light, or he's this or he's that. It's always been character. And I think that's the hardest thing, because that's the attack that you can't win. But, when people ask who do you want on your team, my name gets brought up a lot. It's just, I'm the guy who is going to be accountable. I'm the guy that holds everybody accountable. And that's a tough thing. And that rubs people wrong. And, I'm sure I've rubbed managers wrong on being accountable and things like that. And I think that's affected these situations too. I think if I would have had Ichiro's address or public PR and been groomed a little bit different, I probably wouldn't be in this situation. I'd probably been a darling of the dance. But it's one of those things where, coming through the way I did, if I blew a save, or if I didn't do something, or if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, I wasn't afraid to say something. And if it didn't work, the biggest power in the world is what? The media. And so, sometimes, not understanding how to do that a little bit softer, or have that, probably has cost me the votes, and probably the New York votes, because those seem to be the ones that, stand out to me.
And let me ask you a little bit about life in Houston. And people here in Houston love you. You spent 9 years here. You were drafted by the Astros. And I was texting the other day with Drayden McClain, and he told me that he is cheering for you, and he cannot wait for you to go to the Hall of Fame. And he really wants, like, he's watching closely and wants you to go to the Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you, that that Drayden McClain, the man who owned the Astros when you came here and played for 9 years, is like cheering for you to go to the Hall of Fame and is really excited about you possibly getting in finally this year.
Well, I mean, I think Drayden's always had a big heart. I think he's always had good intentions. And that's always great to hear. I mean, when I left Houston, I wasn't a happy camper, but I think, there's more to why I was sent to Philadelphia than, what people thought as far as me talking and things like that. It was more along the lines of me, they were, Jerry was telling me saving money, and they were, the other was me, but also I was making $8 million. And so they wanted to spread $8 million for Clemens and Pettit, which, I would have done that too. So I'd like to know how you spread $8 million into $22 million. Because that's why he's a millionaire and a billionaire or whatever. But I mean, it's business. And that's something I've learned going through all this. And this is, I'm not upset about any of this. This is so long ago. What it's helped me to do is to understand business from personal. And, and that's helped me to talk to my son, to other guys that I've coached going into pro ball, and understand that it's a business. Don't take it personal. Don't make this. Yeah, you're going to be upset with some decisions, but you can't control them. So move on. And, hopefully this works out. And, I can, see myself in Cooperstown as a Astro.
And speaking of Cooperstown, hopefully as an Astro, that's great to hear, because I know people in Houston would love that. Love nothing more than have you go in as an Astro. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me your all-time Astros Billy Wagner era team. Like, let's line those bad boys up. Like first, second.
Well, Biggio's a DH. Biggio is going to be a DH because Jeff Kent's going to play second.
Okay.
Then I'm going to have Baggy at first, Moises Alou, Ken Caminiti. I'm going to put Ricky Gutierrez at short. I'm going to put Gonzo. I'm going to put, as bad as this sounds, I'm going to put Gonzo in left. I'm going to put Lance Berkman in center field. Brad Osmus, of course, is catching. That's my lineup.
So you're putting Moises at right field? I love Moises.
Right.
I'm not afraid to say this, and I've said it many times. Moises Alou, Billy Wagner, Jeff Bagwell are my three favorite guys to cover in Houston. Like,
I love Moises Alou. Moises Alou is one of my favorite teammates ever, and ever. When I had Tommy John, he was the person who helped me to make that decision. Because I was wondering how I was going to, how I hadn't blown out yet, but it was one of those, you got to go lay it on the line, and if it blows, it blows. And I talked to him about it, and I went out and I threw before a Mets Philly game and blew out, just simply blew out. And I mean, after that, I had to go get surgery. Well, that morning it was early. I'm there. They're drugging me up and getting me ready. And I turn to my right, and there's Moises Alou. He's there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, there's only special people in your life that would get up to come see you because that you mean something, And so when I was in New York and Mo was getting his knee scoped, or I went over to see him, I think there's just something about that that I cherished about how he went about his business. I love, everybody likes his Rico Suave move. There's nobody better coming in a locker room than Moises Alou. I mean, it took him 10 seconds to put tape on, a big dip in, and go take 2 dry swings, and then go out there and just rake. I mean, he would have been a Hall of Famer. I mean, if you could have put who coulda, shoulda, that guy. Holy cow!
With that little wicked smile, like that
Oh,
crooked smile, like, hey guys,
oh,
like,
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, yeah, devious. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. He was by far. Him and Baggy were tight, and so it's fun it's fun to walk in a locker room and see those guys in the locker room.
And I have to mention Roy Oswald, because Roy Oswald's like, that's one of
Oh,
my top guys. My dog's name's Ace because Roy Oswald gave us that black lab. That's how much I care for Roy as a I don't cover him anymore, so I can
well,
say that
but think
I've
about
helped
it. But
him
think
himself.
about Roy. I mean, in today's game, I mean, what's the chance of a Roy Oswald or a Billy Wagner ever being seen in a standard of this game anymore? I mean, you can't even appreciate a Roy Oswald the way you would not even Roy and I could walk down most streets and never be picked out. I mean, I can't tell you how many times Scott Ellerton was called Billy Wagner. So I mean
Wow.
yeah, I mean everybody doesn't see that, and so
And Scott Ellington, for people who don't know, was 6'5" or so, right?
six
Big
foot
dude.
6'8", something
Yeah,
like
big
that.
dude.
He's a monster. Yeah,
And
everybody expected me to be that guy.
and yeah, and Roy Oswald's 6 feet, he'll tell you, and I'm like, okay,
Oh my
Roy.
ass, he
I'm
was.
like, I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
Roy.
my gosh, on his tractor.
Yeah, and we've been out here for a while, so I won't keep you more than 15 minutes, I promise, because I know you have to get to work. And how about, I'll tell you how I voted this year. You know how I voted, but I want you to talk about these people because they're on my ballot. David Wright. I voted for him because I really believe that if he doesn't have the back issues, he is one of the all-time great third basemen. But also because of Jay Horwitz, Shannon Dalton,
Yes.
Ethan Wilson, people who I will forever love. People who, when I was young and in New York and trying to find my way, treated me like, I was at the Newark Star Ledger, but before that, I was at the Journal News, one of the smaller papers, and they treated me like if I was at the New York Times. They didn't. They
David
always.
Wright he treated everybody great. To be in a clubhouse full of guys that he was in and being called the captain. I mean, we knew when we walked in there, that's captain. We knew that, to be 23, 24 years old. And he had to answer some tough questions when we weren't playing well, and people looked at him. He had to come up in big moments. He was your superstar, even though you had Pedro and you had Delgado and Beltran and people around him. He was your superstar, him and Reyes. And so, yeah, without a doubt, I've always thought that David would be a Hall of Famer. I mean, just looking how close his numbers are now to guys who've been in, that have gotten in. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was a big time, consistent player. And, of course, I am biased, and I'll be first. He was a teammate, but he's also from the state of Virginia. So, I mean, that right there automatically makes you a Hall of Famer.
There you go. Well, I tell you what, and I just knew Shannon raved about him,
Oh,
and I know how difficult it is to play in that place and to answer questions when you're not really answering about yourself, but you're answering for the team. And that kid, as far as character, because I left New York before he came up, so I never covered him other than like in the playoffs and as a visiting writer. But when people I respect, like Ethan Shannon, the late Shannon,
yeah.
and Jay, tell you like this guy's like awesome. The captain in New York, that means something.
Oh, it does. And the guy across the cross town is, Derek Jeter. I mean, how David, when you're called the captain in New York, I mean, you're under a microscope. David handled his business the right way. He took care of the people. He knew how to do stuff. And I mean, he may not have had the clout of a Jeter, but I tell you, that guy was a big time player, and he came up big in millions of games that I was about and got to watch him into his career. So, yeah, definitely he would be a guy that I would have put in the Hall of Fame.
Carlos Beltran. You didn't play with him in Houston, but you played with him in New York. I covered him in Houston, and I'd never seen a guy just take over October, not named Barry Bonds. The guy just like that October 2004, I was like, oh my. Like it got to the point where every time he came to the plate, you expected him to homer.
And if he
You
didn't,
know?
he hit a double.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that was the most unbelievable. I mean, as a baseball fan, that's what you enjoyed. I mean, you couldn't make a good pitch or a bad pitch against him. If it's a bad pitch, he's leaving the yard. If it's a good pitch, he's hitting it off the wall. So he's another guy who, hands down, our moral compass in the world of baseball has been skewed. But this guy right here is a definite, he should have been a Hall of Famer as soon as he got on the ballot. Just the way he could change a game and his consistency. He was just and he's a great person. He really is a good person.
And CC Sabathia, I don't know if you know him much, but I know Jimmy Rollins. What would you say about Jimmy Rollins? Because I've gotten some heat over Jimmy Rollins, but you would know Jimmy Rollins.
Jimmy's he's a great player. And what you like about Jimmy is he wasn't afraid of the moment. And I mean, he stepped up in World Series and playoff games, and he led some tough teams. And there's no tougher place to play in Philadelphia. I mean, good is not good enough. I mean, they win the World Series. I remember how hard I felt Philadelphia is when Brad Lidge went to Philadelphia, and I said, he called me and said, he goes, what can I expect? I said, if you're perfect, you'll be great. Well, that year, you remember?
He was perfect.
He was perfect. I was like, well, shit, you'll have no problem. You're great. But then the next year, it's very difficult. And when you're brought up in that farm system like Utley and Ron, you have to dig deep, and, you've got to bleed that. You've got to bleed that culture. And they were just fantastic. It was fun to watch them grow. I mean, because when I played them, they're still young and stuff. And, as they grew, they just became even better and better people. And, I'm a big fan of Utley and Rollins just because I know that what they had to do day in and day. I know there's some Mets fans probably not happy with Utley and things like that, but I'm going to tell you, I truly believe that Utley was not trying to hurt somebody, but he was trying to take his ass out. Just like Will Clark took out Ozzie or Tommy Herr. I mean, that he played it, and right or wrong. I mean, he's a hard-nosed player.
I love those stories. I feel so old because when I started my career at the Long Beach Press Telegram, I covered Chase Utley when it was at Long Beach Poly High, and with Milton Bradley, another guy. Imagine those two guys in the same high school team.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
but is there something that you think people should know about Billy Wagner that maybe we haven't addressed before we go? Because I know we've been on here, but sometimes I think that, especially the writers who perhaps haven't voted for you, like when I think of character, I think of family first. If a guy is, because we see a lot of things, but to me, you're one of those guys that forever it was about family. It was about, and I met you at a time where I was starting my family. Like same thing, Roy Oswald, like when I see his Facebook post with his kids' age, and I'll text them because like we literally started our families at about the same age. So we were going through the same things, asking the same questions. But what's the best lesson you would give Will, Livy, Jeremy, right? Like those are
Will, Jeremy, and Kaysen.
What's the best advice you want them to have from Billy Wagner as a father?
Do not take this so serious. Just have fun, smile, enjoy this, because it is hard. And you, as an athlete, it's more times that you suck than you're doing well. And so enjoy every moment. We used to laugh when I was in the midst of my career. My wife was like, this is forever, and this is grinding, because she was grinding with me. Every save, every outing was a grind. But then, so when me and her talk to our kids, I'm like, smile, enjoy this. I don't care if you go 0 for 4 punch outs. Understand that, man, you get to come out tomorrow. And I said, it sucks, but smile and enjoy what you're doing. It'll make this better. Because I don't think I enjoyed it, because I didn't have that role model to say, hey, at the end of this, things are going to be great. You're going to sit, because everything was about getting here, working hard, and not letting anybody down, and carrying the load for Southwest Virginia, and doing the right thing. And so now for me, I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, smile, enjoy what you're doing, love what you're doing, quit worrying about some of these things that really don't matter. And you'll be able to carry this load without the burden, the feeling of the burden. And that's the thing I enjoyed watching Will when he was playing, smiling so much, because I wish I'd have done that. I wish I would have smiled, enjoyed. I wish I'd have had a little bit more of the Jimmy Rollins in me, a little bit more of the slide, and those things. But looking back, that would be what I would tell my kids going into any of this stuff.
How about life? How about life in general? What's the go-to advice? Because very few people in life have gone through what you've gone through.
Well, I would, what I try to tell our kids is just trust God. God's the ultimate gift they can have. I mean, I can't do any of this without Him. And so any burden or any conflict that I have, I'm always telling them, God's got this. If, Livy gets hurt, or Will's going through a slump, or somebody, Jeremy was going through a slump, or Cason's wondering where he fits in, it's God's got this. You don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about these things or sweat these details. I've been through it, knew that, and found out that God's got this. And He's, at the end of the day, He's got you, and you're going to be fine. Trust in Him.
I'm going to leave you with the most difficult question. Billy Wagner's all-time team. And we're talking, so now you got some extra Hall of Famers to consider, guys you've played with. I'm gonna get your lineup, because I have to throw you a fastball, 99-mile-per-hour one to end it. Give me your all-time team of guys you've played with.
Let's start with the pitching staff. Okay, we'll start with the 5 starters: Roy, Daryl Kyle, Glavin, Pedro, Randy.
That'll win some games.
Yeah. Some of these guys could have been starters, but they're going in my bullpen. So Hampton, Jay Powell, Flash Gordon, Brad Lidge, Peter Moylan. So
Wow.
I'll just name 5 relievers.
Right.
All-time teams. Rick Ankiel is going to be on my team. That's for sure. I tell you, Jason Varitek's is going to be on my team. Yeah, there's so many guys. I mean, I could have a whole team just in relievers, with Papelbon and Sotaguchi, or not Sotaguchi, but Saito.
Mm-hmm.
But first base would. I may have to double up with Baggy, and Baggy's the best. Baggy is the best. JK, and the other shortstop. The one thing that Jimmy Rollins and Gonzalez. Do you remember the Gonzalez from? He came up with Miami.
Miami, yeah.
And he was so. Everybody thought he was always a hater. Well, I got to play with him in Boston, and he was wearing 13. I walked in, and he handed me that number without anything. He goes, respect, handed me. And then the next year, I was in Atlanta, and we had a very young shortstop, and I said, he was struggling. He was immature, and Bobby asked me about Gonzalez. I said, take him today and twice on Sunday.
Oh wow.
He was just that type of teammate. Loved that guy. Loved him to death. He was probably one of the him and Jimmy are probably by far and away the best shortstops I got to play with. And of course Chase Utley. There's no better guy than Smut. He might have to be him and Ken Caminiti remind me a lot of each other. They were rough. They played the game very, very hard. Rick Ankiel would have to be in my outfield though, playing with him and Beltran, and guys. I mean, there's so many. Goodness gracious! I mean, just to think back, just Brian Hunters. I mean, how awesome he was. I mean, all these guys have a direct influence on where I'm at today, and so to name one team is is very hard because they ran down so many balls. I mean, they made so many plays. They made me look good. So I mean, they taught me off the ball. Great, Mike Maddox. Mike Maddox is one of the greatest philosophers and shrinks in baseball. I'll never forget him talking through when I hurt my elbow flexor or flexor tendon. So I mean, every guy, Doug Henry, Jay Powell, Flash, Mike Williams. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, there were so many great players that I played with. Tim Morrell, Riel Cormier. I mean, there's so many great players. I don't know if you can look back and go, well, this is just one team. I could probably make three of them.
That is awesome. I love it. Your outfit would be amazing though. Like,
yes, they would, because they have to run a long ways.
Well, I mean, like you got Beltran.
But I do get to pick the place I want to play too, right? If we're going to pick the team,
let's do it. Where are you going to play?
We're going to Shea Stadium, baby.
Okay.
We're playing at night. That ball don't go nowhere.
All right. I have a piece of Shea Stadium in my living room. I love Shea Stadium. So when that came down, my wife for one Christmas got me a piece of Shea Stadium. So I love Shea Stadium. Minute Maid Park's a beautiful stadium too.
Oh, it is. But I'm a pitcher.
Yeah,
I am a pitcher. I mean, if I was a hitter, absolutely. But Shea, I love Shea. I did. That was just that uniqueness to it.
And I tell you what, and I'll let you go here, but Citi Field, holy smokes, that environment there.
Mm-hmm.
Among the best, and me, like I love my Latino flair. I love big cities. I love to be Latino in Citi Field. It's like wow.
Yeah. Well, and it is, and I've been there when it's been packed and went back for old timers games and stuff like that. But the place that you probably I forgot about was the Astrodome when Randy Johnson's pitching. And there's 65,000 people in there, and you honestly can't think. And he's facing Big Mac, and he's facing. I mean, those are two places that when I look back at, those are places that any pitcher would love to pitch at.
Well, I hope I've done my best voting. All I could do is vote, but I hope that on Tuesday you and I are texting. And you're happy as hell, crying like a little baby. I want to see you cry because I know you're going to cry.
Oh yeah.
And I appreciate the time and the access and accountability that you've shown me since I met you in 2001. And I know some people were like, "Who's this jerk from New York?" Because at first, I know some players were like, "Dude, this isn't how we're used to being covered." I'm like, "Hey." And Baggy was like, "Hey,
well, without you, I probably wouldn't have this be where I'm at. I mean, it probably wouldn't do me any good to sit there and talk to anybody. So you always made me look good. So I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you."
All right, my friend. Well, be well and good luck. Thank you very much for this time. We've been with Billy Wagner, one of the greatest closers of all time. Talking about his career. Thank you very much, Billy. You have a great day.
Thanks, Jesus. You too, buddy.